Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rosalie Olmsted. I am WiCyS Executive Assistant. It's an honor to have you here today with WiCyS strategic partner, Nestlé IT. Before we get started, I'd like to give a quick overview of the WiCyS organization. WiCyS is a 501c3 nonprofit with our goal of recruiting, retaining, and advancing women in their careers in cybersecurity. We go by our acronym WiCyS because that is exactly what we are, a global cyber sisterhood. Our community is made up of over 9,500 members in over 90 countries. We have over 70 professional affiliates with 260 student chapters around the world. We offer a variety of initiatives and skills development training programs, scholarships, our annual conference, leadership series, Job Board Plus Plus, Speakers Bureau, and many more. We want to give a special thanks to our strategic partners who throughout the year fund our organization, specifically our Tier 1 partners being Akamai, Amazon, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon University's Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, Ford, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, Sandia National Laboratories, and SentinelOne. We want to give a special thanks today to Nestlé IT, who is hosting today's webinar. Throughout the webinar today, please feel free to drop your questions in the question box below. We will be answering them during the presentation as well as specifically at the end during the Q&A session. And then lastly, please subscribe to the WiCyS newsletter at wicys.org with the subscribe button in the upper right-hand corner. And with that, I want to say thank you again to Nestlé IT, and I'm going to pass it over to Michelle.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rosalie. Appreciate it, and definitely welcome the opportunity to be here. Thank you for everyone who's attending. Although we can't see your faces, we know you're out there, so appreciating the support from internally, our crew there too as well. So my name is Michelle Ziegler. I am the Director of Security and Compliance for both North America and LATAM here at Nestlé, that tiny little food company, as I like to say. And with me are my four esteemed colleagues who I'd like to quickly introduce themselves, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to share today. So starting from the top, Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane Kolkovich, and I'm an IT application owner for marketing, sales, and e-commerce here at Nestlé.
I'm Heather Reed. I'm head of cybersecurity for Purina, Nestlé Purina North America, so Canada and the US. Marlo.
Yep. Hi, I'm Marlo Rakers, and I am also an IT application owner for Nestlé in North America. Carla?
Super. I am the Cybersecurity Incident Response Lead for North America and Latin America here in Nestlé.
Awesome. Thanks, ladies. So just to start, we noodle quite a bit about what we want to share and how we can help our audience. So whether you've been in cyber for a long time, or you're doing this as a senior individual, whether you're new to the field, and if you are, welcome. And we wanted to understand what we could share that might be helpful. So we chose to focus on a few core areas, one around cyber operations and the growing threat. The second area around third-party risk, because most of us have to deal with that, but we don't always control what our third parties do. And then lastly, secure culture and how we can have some ideas that we can share with you around what we do at Nestlé, and regardless of the size of your company, what you can do. So just to kind of put it in perspective and why we're here, for those of you that aren't aware or haven't looked at recent statistics, cybercrime in 2023 represented $8 trillion, and there was a cyber incident every 39 seconds. And to really put it in further context, cybercrime is now larger than global illegal drug trade. So let that sink in for a second. We train all of our new people on these things because it's super important to understand the magnitude of the problem, how it's growing. It's projected to grow at an additional 15%, every year, and it continues to. And people are actually leaving the drug trade to come into our industry, and so those nefarious actors and those threats, continuously impact us every day. So all the people on this panel deal with these threats on a regular basis. But I want to first turn to Carla, who manages and runs, as she mentioned, our CSOC operation, and kind of understanding those statistics. How do you and the team manage that ever-evolving threat?
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, it's a very interesting information that we are handling. I'm so happy to be here and share some of the knowledge that we are seeing in Nestle in the CESIR team or Cybersecurity Operations Center team. But most of the common threats that we are seeing, even not in North America and Latam, even around the world and externally, not only Nestle, is like the phishing and malware attacks are increasing this year. Malware attacks are like more than 50% more than the other years, and ransomware attacks. So these kind of attacks are affecting other companies. And for example, one company is leaving an incident or cybersecurity incident, sorry, and then the impact goes directly to another companies, to their vendor, to the merchant acquisition. So this is really, really a huge impact. So this is another interesting point or interesting data that we are seeing in this cyber incident response team. And even the most common threat that we have or that we are seeing in this series, the phishing or social engineering attacks, right now is increasing this kind of smishing and phishing attacks. So this is really like a new modus operandi from the attacker. So this is something that we are learning now. And even what is the main purpose of the social engineering? The main purpose is steal credentials. So after a phishing attack, the most common takeover and account attacks are the credential stuffing attacks. So that's something that are really interesting data from for this year.
Absolutely. So when we think about the human firewall component, right, that means all of us play a role, and we try to evolve that message internally, but also with the external threats. I know, Heather, you were looking at something recently. You want to share sort of your thoughts on what you've seen recently around benefits for these individuals?
Yeah. So I had an interesting conversation with one of our cybersecurity vendors, and they were telling me that these criminal organizations are running actual legitimate businesses out of Russia, North Korea, China, where they're actually paying benefits and offering kind of a nice, cushy office setting. And it's really fascinating that that this cybercrime as a service is actually considered a legitimate source of income in a lot of places.
Absolutely, leading to the statistics we first shared, right, which is why it's becoming so large, and it'll continuously be an overwhelming threat for any size company. But again, the goal is to share with you today some of the things that Nestle does. And I know one of the areas, because I've been in this industry for over 15 years now, and the one statistic that ironically has not changed is over 90% of the incidents that are created in any size company are due to phishing and the impacts that individuals can have. So we always like to remind people of being diligent and being aware. So I know that for your organization, Heather, and the folks that are on your team here on this call, you guys have done some really interesting things to sort of look at phishing and combating and helping build that human firewall capability. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and share with the audience?
Yeah, actually, Jane Kolkovich has been helping me a lot with our cybersecurity ambassador program. So I'd like to give her an opportunity to talk about that.
Sure, thank you. So again, I'm Jane Kolkovich, and yes, we have an ambassador program, a cybersecurity ambassador program here at Nestle, and it helps to get our employees involved in making sure that they're taking responsibility and sharing information about cybersecurity throughout their teams. So it kind of puts additional responsibility and additional ownership within each of the departments in our company. We have a lot of activities during the year, and I feel like the group is really engaged. And Heather, to your credit, I mean, you started this program, and I feel like it's really changed the culture of our company. I feel like people can reach out to us. They don't feel intimidated by these topics. I feel like it's a very open conversation, and I feel like it's a real value to our company.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, one of the key impetus for me starting this awareness style program was that cybersecurity needs to feel relevant to everyone every day. And we wanted people to feel like they had a deeper understanding of how it's impacting their personal lives, their children's lives, and then how to protect the company. It's all tied together. It's all the same thing. Protecting your identity, protecting your own personal credentials. So by having ambassadors out there in every department, we are able to make it more relevant and get our messaging out to everyone in a more genuine way, and people can start to see, oh, this thing happened to one of my peers, one of my colleagues right here at Nestle, and they can start to see the impact of these things across the company.
I do feel like it's really encouraged people to come forward with their own stories, which makes this a more personal message. And just to share a little bit about myself too, like I have kids. And so for my kids, I take some of those messages home to them. I mean, I feel like it applies to companies, to families, to everyone. So I think it's made it really conversational within our company.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our mantra, I know for us and for myself, I deliver for every single new IT employee that comes into Nestle, we deliver an onboarding training. So regardless of your company size, that would be, something that I would always recommend, regardless of how large or how small. It doesn't have to be complex, but building in good cyber hygiene habits and making sure you educate those individuals so that as new employees come into the organization, they understand their role in it. I think often when we're not in IT, especially, it's super easy to forget, right, that you're part of it, right? And because we're the targets and we're all human, right? That's why it's called a human firewall, because best practice there. We also train them that good practice at work is good practice at home, and vice versa. The elderly, the children, and you'd be surprised at how much people still take away, and making sure your out of office messages, little things like that don't say I'm gone, right? Say you're away from your desk or something simple. Those are the little tips that we give our employees every day so that it becomes top of mind and security is top of mind for them. But when it's not the personal intervention. So I think, Marlo, you're going to talk a little bit how we protect our data. As many large companies, there's a lot of data that moves back and forth, and kind of how we do that.
Yeah, so any vendor that we share Nestle data with, we take through a cloud compliance process. So Jane, why don't you kind of tell us the first portion of it, and then we can kind of talk about how we continue to protect that data. I can kind of tag on to the second process.
That sounds awesome. So for third-party vendors and cloud solutions, it's Marlo and my responsibility to ensure that each of those business owners. Do you hear an echo? Are you good?
We're good.
Okay. Good. So for each of those business owners that are bringing in a new vendor or a new cloud solution, we work with them to make sure that that vendor is safe, or as safe as we can have it, and mitigate any risk that there is. We use a couple of tools to evaluate these vendors and these solutions from an objective perspective, and one of those is a BIA. It's called a Business Impact Assessment. And that BIA helps us understand things like, is there credit card information that's being shared? Is there any personal data that's being shared? Is it more general, or is it very personal or sensitive information? And based on that, we'll take different measures, acquire different types of documentation, or put in different controls to make sure that we're mitigating any risk. We also use a PIA, which is a privacy impact assessment, and that helps us ensure that the individuals have consented to their data being used, that the right controls are in place for that. We try to figure out and document whether there's profiling, marketing profiling, or if there's any automated decision making that's happening, so that people feel secure about the data that they are offering us. We have it on like a leveled scale. So for vendors or solutions that are more complex or offer more risk, we have more controls in place for those. And Marlo, can you please go ahead and go through some of those controls that we have?
Yeah, so from a security standpoint, we look at a lot of different things in terms of, and rate them based on the strength of how the vendor has them put in place. So one piece is just we call it the account lifecycle management. So that's really looking at, you know, whether we have single sign-on incorporated with the software, or MFA, multi-factor authentication. We look at how long the solution has for idle session timeout. We look at password length, complexity, failed attempts for putting in the wrong password history, those types of things. So if it doesn't quite meet Nestle's standards, we ask the vendor then to make an improvement there. We also look at encryption. So, you know, how is the data encrypted, data at rest, data in motion, all of those pieces for the encryption. We also look at, whenever we put together the contracts, we have several requirements that really secure the confidentiality and integrity of the data. We want to prevent unauthorized and unlawful processing of the data, and we want to protect against accidental or unlawful destruction, accidental loss, or unauthorized access to any Nestlé data. We also look at whether an organization has their ISO certification or their SOC 2. So there's a lot of different pieces, especially depending on how much data the solution is processing. We have more stringent levels of the evidence that is required.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And a couple of things my next statement is going to kind of bundle a little bit the question that's in there. I know that there was a question regarding the effectiveness of employee training, right? So that statistic, the 90% statistic, is an industry statistic. It's not necessarily, it's not specifically a Nestlé one. So part of what has to happen and why the human firewall component was part of our talk today was because it's ongoing, right? It's an evolving, and kind of like education and learning, there's a layered effect and continuing to remind people, but usually experiential makes a difference. So gamifying some things, and that's kind of where we're moving with our platform, and being able to provide a single window pane for our employees to understand not only what compliance training they've had, but then how do they stack up against other members of the organization and IT, kind of like we all look at our credit score to understand, you know, like what we would be dealing with, working with, where do we stand. It's a similar concept, right? And I think people, when you can look at it that way and you can understand where you stack rank, it often gives people perspective. So that involvement is another way that we work around just the training. We're a multinational company, so we're going to have our legal and compliance just like every other large company. But we try to take that to the next level. So we've introduced this gamification, but also as part of that, they can track whether they've reported phishing, it was just spam. So the positives, false positives, and we're trying to contextualize that for our employees on a regular basis to be able to address exactly what your question is, right? Because if it's just boring stats every day, probably that's not going to resonate over time. So making it interactive and really finding a way for things to happen. Everybody knows that hopefully October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So a quick nod to that. I know we're all working on that, but is there anything that you guys want to add to that? And as well as our cyber crisis simulation. So we do that, and that's the practice component, right? Putting activity around it to reinforce. But anything you guys want to add around Cyber Awareness Month coming up?
Yeah, well, I'd like to just say one thing back to the training piece, which is that one thing that we found from the initial pilot that we did with the ambassador program was that departments that had an ambassador reported more phishing on the simulations. They had a higher reporting rate, and they had a lower click rate. So we feel like having that ambassador in the department peer-to-peer makes a huge difference in how effective the training is. But Cybersecurity Awareness Month is a really big deal at Purina. We do a lot of amazing things here. We have guest speakers come in. We have a big lobby event. We have different stations where people can come and learn if their own information has been pwned, if they have questions about SharePoint protection, and they want to become an ambassador. We have stations for all kinds of things, and games and prizes, and we also recognize every year during Cybersecurity Awareness Month our ambassadors and what they've brought to the organization, with a nice luncheon, the guest speaker, a nice gift, and just some general recognition, because they do matter and they make a huge difference to us. But Cybersecurity Awareness Month is big, and I will say we try to do something every month. Sometimes we'll just run a small game. Sometimes we'll just, be in the cafeteria talking to people, but we're here all the time, every month. Cybersecurity Awareness Month is just bigger.
And I think too, a lot of our awareness has come just from sharing personal stories. We see myself, I was not necessarily phished, but I was the victim of, someone imitating a friend on Facebook trying to sell stuff. And here I am, I work in cybersecurity, and I was totally fooled, and I did not take the own steps that I preach, so, and I was they totally get you on an emotional level. And I think that just sharing out these personal stories has such an amazing impact. I came from a previous role where I was the executive assistant of the CIO, and cybersecurity was never in my foresight to get into as a career path. And so I think that bringing cybersecurity down to a digestible level for anyone and everyone in the organization is highly impactful. So that's what we really try to do through the ambassador program and through education, not only in October, but throughout the year.
Yeah, Marla, you remind me with my with my training. The one thing that the personal story I always share, and in my previous lives, I owned the training platform. And my team was the one that developed the phishing messages and sent the phishing messages. So important context. And I remember one time it was about parking, and it was some sort of pass. And across from our building, there was a parking lot, and you were always warned when you started it was a big global Fortune 200 company, don't go through the parking lot honking at people, because you never know if it's one of the executives, right? And so we put together this program, and of course I'm running late, running through, get into the building, and here comes the phishing that my team just sent out, and I clicked it. I clicked it as the owner. I always remind you, this is the human component, right? And it's a training exercise, and reminding people that if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't, to always be diligent. But they prey on a number of things. They prey on the fact that we're all in a corporate environment, so we're kind of instinctively taught to help each other, hopefully, right? And that we're moving fast, that we're multitasking, and that we may or may not be paying attention to the granularity. So that's what we try to help people understand, is how to continuously pay attention to that granularity. But I think, Carla, were you going to add something in there?
Yes, thank you, Michelle. And I think that from our side, from Cybersecurity Operations Center or Incident Response Team, we are seeing all these kind of impacts when the user click on it. So this is really highly important, all the security awareness campaigns and the ambassadors and all the things to educate the people, because most of the impacts are really, really huge for the company. For example, all the financial impacts that we could have, all the operational, all the business disruption that we could have for a phishing campaign, for a ransomware or malware attack. So we don't know what could be faced. And even other kind of issues could be the compliance issues if we are facing like a data breach involving privacy or personal data. So we are facing these kind of things, and it's really huge. It's really important to have this education to the employees, and even to prevent damage or reputation about the company. So we can see all the information maybe about a cybersecurity incident on a company in the dark web or deep web, and this could affect the reputation of a company. So I think all these kind of campaigns are really important to prevent these impacts or event for the company. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw some questions in the chat around AI. So I know that's sort of the topic du jour these days. And it's evolving, right? The AI has many implications from cyber to technical to moral, ethical, legal. And we're on the precipice of that. I think most companies are kind of turning a corner around things as more has evolved. But this is, the artificial intelligence. Depending on the audience and how old you are, it would be akin to the advent of the internet or mobile phones in that time, right? Which are now so embedded in our daily lives, we don't think about it. And AI will be the same, but there's a whole lot of things around it. So like any other global company, we have guidance in place. We have innovations teams, the cyber and our legal and compliance from our group, which sits in Vevey, where our headquarters are. And we publish general guidance, but part of our principle as an organization is giving that freedom and a framework to our operating companies, because they are so vastly different. We have over 2,500 different products with different operating models and wholly owned subsidiaries, et cetera. So part of what we try to do is provide the framework and then the freedom in the framework. And then the folks like all of us on this call then work and we provide independent guidance. And so when we look at the crisis exercises and the training and all these things combined, what we try to do as a security and compliance team is ultimately be there for questions. We give a really quick ability for people to report things if they see it, right? See something, say something. Started, a long time ago, but we absolutely have that principle within Nestlé. We very quickly have processes and governance in place. So there should be a third-party incident. How can we get that information, quickly assess if there are any impacts to Nestlé, and how do we make sure we can get that reporting very quickly? So in your organizations, regardless of size, you can set up a small framework process to be able to do that. And then if you're doing it consistently every time, eventually the messages and the training can come out to the folks that are involved in those processes as well, whether they're from accounting, finance, procurement, supply chain, all of those people, they learn a lot through those third-party incidents as well. So that's kind of some ideas that we can share with the folks in the audience, regardless of the size of your organization. Right, so moving into the next topics, I think we were going to talk a little bit to you about some of the secure culture stuff that we do beyond those. So was there, Heather, were you going to also talk a little bit more about some of the specific programs?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Michelle. I was fascinated by the slide and not listening to you.
Yeah, no worries. We were talking about the actual programs themselves for helping others, giving them some ideas around secure culture. I know you had gone through a few things, but were you going to talk through some detail around a couple of your programs that you can share some ideas for them to put in place?
Sure. I think one of the things that has been very popular here at Purina is that we turn everything into pets. So everyone who wants to is allowed to bring their dog or cat to campus to work. And so the culture here is very casual. We have pets everywhere. And so we try very hard to gauge what would be a fun receptive thing for people to grasp onto when it comes to these types of things. Let me see if I can quickly pull something up for you. So for instance, we do pause before on almost everything we do. So pause before you share, pause before you click, pause before you connect. And then that is kind of the motto that we have for cybersecurity in Purina. We put it on everything, regardless of what our focus is for the theme of what we're doing. We add that just to remind people all the time to take that moment and pause. So that's one thing that we do. I think it's been really important that we have ensured that there is a little bit of branding around what we're doing. Marlo, Jane, anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so. I think that was a good synopsis for sure.
Okay. In our cyber awareness, was some of the other things that we do is we do bring in external experts, right? So we have the FBI and folks like that come in on a regular basis to educate Nestlé, right? So that we can stay ahead of the trends, things of that nature. But we really try to do a lot of hands-on, and with our third-party suppliers, whether it's larger consulting companies or the smaller, supply chain groups, we work with them and they'll come in and they'll be a part of that. We also do technical expos. So this is where we take our IT expertise and we translate that for the average individual. And that what we try to do is help them understand that as you're using these tools, here's how you can do it responsibly within our AI framework, within our technical framework, and making sure that everybody understands that. And we do those in off cycles, right? It's not just during CSAM, but we do technical expos and things like that on a regular basis across all of our operating companies. So one of the complexities of Nestlé is that we're multinational and global. So we have multiple zones, and then with each of those zones, we have independent operating companies like the Purina, as you mentioned, right? So that's one of our operating groups. We have our health science division and others. So and many of the brands that you see that you may not even know are Nestlé brand. Each of those companies and operating companies bring in their own expertise, and they try to do the activities that are going to be highlighted by their audience. Okay, excellent. Well, I saw a couple questions, ladies. If you can help me make sure we're reviewing these and we don't miss any of them. The key components of the ambassador program, that's what I was hoping there. I think you addressed that one, Heather, but is there anything else you wanted to add to that, the ambassador specifically?
I just think that having an ambassador program, however you can do it, I know organizations are all different, and even within Nestlé, we have so many different ways of working between the different operating companies. Some companies are mostly remote, some of us are mostly on campus, and so you do have to kind of figure out what's going to work for your organization. But one thing I will say is that most organizations already have some kind of framework for communication in place. And if you can just take advantage of the existing infrastructure that your company already has for messaging, that is your best bet. We use our corporate PR department has monthly script that all of our vice presidents read to their to the people that report to them every month, and we take advantage of that and we put a cybersecurity message into that, and then we educate our ambassadors on that topic so that they can in those meetings then elaborate on that message and talk about it in a little bit more detail by providing anecdotal stories that relate or additional facts about whatever the topic is, so that the message is getting out there to everyone in the 75 words that we're allowed, but then it gets out there in a lot more detail in the groups that have an ambassador. So that's the key, I would say, is just take advantage of all the things that are available to you already. Use your wallpaper that your company has on your machine, and ask if you can put your cybersecurity messaging on there. If you're using, oh gosh, I don't know what other companies are using right now, but we're using Workplace currently, which is Facebook's version of, it's Facebook for Work, and it is going away. So I'm not sure what we're going to use next, but we use that platform a lot for our messaging. But use everything that's available to you.
Absolutely. And small businesses, there was a question there. I would say that, small businesses have unique challenges because there's not always large budgets and things like that. But I would say really understand where your points of entry are and understanding where threat actors can actually, penetrate your perimeter and what that looks like. And really moving as you go forward and you implement different solutions, really understand where your data is and how to protect it, and understand whether it's crown jewels or here in the US, our privacy laws. We have a lot of new ones on the books as of January of this year. So I would say those are the key things to understand. And then once you understand that landscape, working with your technical teams to make sure that you have the right protections in place. While, Nestle obviously as a global company is going to have some larger solutions, point solutions can, in the industry can help. There's Gartner and many other ways that you can access information that doesn't cost money, that can help provide you guidance regardless of the size of the organization. So that would be what I would add for that particular one.
Yep, and just a check onto that as well. If you're a real small business and you're looking for some software like cloud solutions, I would start first just to see if the cloud solution is ISO or SOC 2 certified. It's a great way to make sure that they're serious about their data and how they encrypt it and protect that. So that's a great place to start as you're researching different cloud solutions.
That's a good call.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I see another question here around the percentage of women. So we do have DEI initiatives here, like many, but I'm very proud to say that while our statistics are strong, what we try to do is focus on putting the right people in the right roles. And we do have an overwhelming amount of female representation across the globe, not just in cybersecurity, but in IT. And our statistics stack up very, very well against the industry averages. We don't post them on sites like this, but certainly they would be available. But, I would toss it to you, ladies. I feel like we're exceptionally represented. It's why we're here and we build relationships like this. But what would you all add? How do you feel about that?
I don't know. Honestly, I feel like I got lucky in hiring my team. Three of the four main people on my team are women, and that was just because they had the right skill set. So I really think that we need to start focusing on making sure that the women who are coming up and going through university and beyond are set up to have the right skill set to be part of a growing. I'm going to say this, but it's a high paying job for most women are not getting paid what people in cyber and IT are getting paid, and I think it's really important that we make sure that women are set up to have that skill set so that they can get those high paying jobs. And then the other thing I would say is that one of my mentors here in the company, actually it's the CIO that Marlo used to support. She once told me that she made it to the top, and she always felt like it was her job to take the elevator back down and pick up more women and bring them up with her. And I've just carried that with me ever since.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that lady she's talking about. Phenomenal leader, and absolutely always has good nuggets of wisdom. And she does speak at various events. But, I think absolutely. And I think also, for those of us that feel like we do have the job that we love and we're passionate about, we've made it, however you want to characterize it, it's just always learning, right? And understanding that it is evolution of learning. and how do you pass along those learnings? So I've done a number of webinars. I've done this with WiCyS before, because the spirit of that is I learn from all of you as well, right? Because this is evolving landscape that we're in. It's really important to share. And I think Marlo had mentioned that a couple of times, but it's important to share. And in our industry in particular, not just in these women forums, but in general, because this is how we learn from each other, but also it's how we understand the patterns of what the actual threat is, how the threat landscape is changing, maybe something we're not always aware of, right? Nestle represents manufacturing and consumer product goods, but we can learn a lot from other manufacturing sectors, from the airline sector, from the insurance sector. So I think sharing that and getting involved in communities where you can start to see these things is super important. And then how do you take that learning and look at the patterns within that? Most people that work with me know I'm a big pattern person, right? Because I think patterns are very telling, and you can understand and maybe get ahead of some of those learnings and share as you do that. New question came in. When looking for a cyber role, what was the one question that you would ask in your interview process? Oh my gosh, there are a lot of them. I have a number of them, but I know we have some other interviews. So Carla, Heather, I'm going to turn this to you guys, and I'll ask
Yes.
mine. But you guys have both hired people in the last few months. So what would you say there?
Okay, in my case, for the cybersecurity incident response team, again, it's really exciting and it's really interesting to see this because something that I learned from experience is that from as incident responder, you need to have like this technical knowledge, but it's not the main important thing to be in cybersecurity. You need to have soft skills, or you need to have other aptitudes or good aptitudes to complement this your job or your role. So right now, talking as a cybersecurity incident response team, I can tell you that you need like an interdisciplinary team, that you have the technical people, but of course we need to investigate, we need to learn the technology, we need to learn what is happening with other tools, with other areas, with IT, with network, with whatever. But at the same time, we need to communicate with external people, with external stakeholders, with other areas we don't know. So we need communication and soft skills. So an interdisciplinary team could be a great idea to create a cybersecurity team. In my case, the incident response teams, we are communicating, we are investigating, we are creating documentation, and even we are creating too many things to prevent cybersecurity incidents from the technical side. For example, we need to learn how the attackers are performing all the new ways or new modus operandi that they have, and we need to perform continuous learning in order to create new ways to prevent. And we need to learn more technologies, we need to learn more ways to how can we implement more measures as cybersecurity incident response team to respond immediately to this. So we need like a huge I don't know, a great variety of knowledge from people, IT people, network people, soft skills, and I think this could be a great complement to build a great cybersecurity team. So this is in my experience as incident responder. So here.
I liked your answer. I
I
thought that was
love
really
that.
good.
Yeah,
I really think that diversity is one of the key things here. So for my personal journey, I mean, I had education in marketing and sales, IT experience, and I didn't necessarily anticipate getting into a cybersecurity role. One, because it wasn't around like so many years ago, but also just the ability to be able to be open to change and to be able to adjust and adapt. I think that that's key in this area. And also, in regard to the earlier question about how to, for the percentage of women in cybersecurity, I encourage everyone to go out for those roles and not to rule yourself out for them. I think that a lot of my past experience in business and IT really applied, and I didn't necessarily know that until I came into the role and saw how it's a technical role in some cases, but it's also got all this creativity and marketing and promotion that's needed and team engagement that's involved. So it just expanded my mind to what possibilities are out there for this type of field. So those are some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I had done a webinar sometime last year in my journey. And when I thought about the things that I tried to come up with some really tangible things, but I would say always be curious, right? One of the things that a lot of people get kind of complacent in is they think it's not about just my job, but this is just my role. But if you're always curious and understanding, yeah, I might be responsible for this, but how does my role impact these things, especially when it comes to IT and cyber? But I would say the soft skills that Carla mentioned, easy to describe, hard to do, right? And so with that, one of the key things that I found in transitioning, regardless of the role, is to be able to, what we do in IT and especially in cyber is super complex. And most people, as you've heard, don't think it applies to them. So being able to synthesize a lot of stuff and being able to specifically storytell will always elevate you, regardless of whether you're technical or not. But most folks need that clarity. And so being able to leverage that and applying that will always separate you. I know I have a trainee who we just brought on board full time, and I'm excited because I know she's out in the audience, even though I can't see her, but she's phenomenal at writing and translating this stuff, but putting it in a way that makes it super clear to the people that don't do IT and cyber every day. And she could attest to the fact that I was blown away by her skills, especially being new to the corporate environment. And I told her to continue to hone that, because that will always elevate her in whatever capacity. So for those of you out there that are new, figure out a way to storytell. And I always remind folks that you have to lead from the front, regardless of what your level is, whether you're a contractor, whether you're a temp, an intern, it doesn't matter. We all are our own brand, and we lead with that, right? And whatever is important in that regard is what you can apply. And then the more you can storytell around why this matters, what is it about cyber and the human firewall component that matters, as long as you can continue to explain that in a way that's, tangible and understandable for individuals, that will always, separate you from other folks for sure, especially if you're interviewing.
I saw another question that said, what's the best piece of advice, or something like, I don't see it anymore, but for somebody who's entering this field. And I would just say to anyone entering any field of your interest, networking, networking, networking. Every position that I have ever had, from being a server in a restaurant when I was a teenager to being in this role as head of cybersecurity, has been because of my networking and making sure that people know where my interests lie, and helping me build my skills and be positioned to get into those roles when they become available.
Yeah,
Yep.
Great point.
I agree.
I think I saw something about Toastmasters. And ladies, I don't know if we have one of those internally, to be honest with you.
do.
We do.
Oh, we
Yep.
do,
We
right?
do.
Yeah, I think it's featured in the elevators right now. So yes.
You see, I'm remote. I'm not in the elevators. But yes, we do. So to answer that question, Patrick.
It made me
Yeah.
actually think about this presentation today, because I really do feel like that's one of the things that I love to sharpen, like as a tool in my toolbox, to be able to, like you had said, Michelle, synthesize this information and make it palatable and make it interesting for people and make it so that they know what the benefits are of this. So yes.
Yeah. I always call myself a cyber geek. I've been doing this a long time, but I also know that I'm well past the statistics, right, for this and the growth. But I think you have to have a passion for it as well. And what I found, and I've hired hundreds and hundreds of people into this field, and then thousands across my career. And, I started out my early career in recruitment, so I'm always leveraging those skill sets. And one of the things I've noticed is you have to have a passion for it, because if you don't, most people don't last super, super long in the industry because they look at it from the technical perspective rather than looking at how can I bring this knowledge forward for others to learn from. So I think if you fundamentally like doing those kinds of things and you can tell the right story, and help people understand the role that they can play in what we call the WIFM, what's in it for me. I think that often supercharges people. And when I think about the arc of my career and what I had shared before, is by being able to share those stories and not just translate, but being curious, that is what put me in front of individuals for the next level, the next level, the next level. And I think if you think about those moments and then try to create those moments for yourself, that could be something that might be helpful.
I've seen a lot of people asking about how to get into the field when they have no experience, how they can find a mentor in this space. And I think it can be tricky when you're seeing job postings that say you need years of experience. So one of the things that I would say to that experience question is that if you're in an organization that has a cybersecurity department or person who you can go to and ask for a stretch assignment or some extra work that you can do in cyber so that you can count that as some experience for yourself over time, that's a great move. It's good for your career. It's also good for you to make sure that this is actually something that you enjoy once you're in it.
Yeah, I do have to admit, and then Rosalie, I'm going to hand it to you for 1 second, because I know WiCyS has a wonderful mentoring program that you can add some to that I know just opened. But I think that, to Heather's point, creating those opportunities for yourself and thinking through that is key. But mentors come in all shapes and sizes, right? And I would say that some of the most sage advice I've gotten has nothing to do with IT or cybersecurity, but being able to apply that. My very, very first job when I was in high school was a teller at a bank. And the lessons that I learned from how people interface and interact when it comes to them and their money and the things and that pattern of behavior, right? I still take those lessons with me, and we won't talk about how long that's been because I don't want to share that part. But the point is, if you're always open to bringing those things, you can accumulate those learnings and then try to pass those on to others and put yourself in others' shoes and think about, what could I share with them? And then there's always going to be somebody that needs that kind of help. And don't be afraid to ask for mentorship. But I would say beyond mentorship, sponsorship, right? Find other executives or senior individuals that can not only mentor you, but that can understand your goals and objectives in your career, because often a lot of those are come in other meetings or opportunities where executives are speaking, and folks that can talk positively on your behalf and understand your desires and your paths can lobby for you and can be a good sponsor for you when you're not available to speak for yourself. So I would say that sponsorship is just as important as mentorship. And then Rosalie, do you want to add anything on that?
Yes, I would love to, because WiCyS, we have over 10 different programs that we run throughout the year. And our mentorship program is my favorite program, because my mentor is the reason that I've gotten to where I'm at in my career and be able to be as successful as I am. Because she decided when we met, she's like, I see value in you and I'm going to help get you to where I think you should be, which is spectacular. And she deserves huge bonus points for doing that. But our mentorship program actually just did close the applications. But if you shoot me an email, I will talk to our program manager and see if it's possible for us to add a little bit more members in, because there is such a value in having someone at another further career stage being able to provide you input and guidance on how to get to where you want to go. And I think my best advice is to find someone that is in a position or a role that's like, what you're doing is really interesting to me, and reaching out. Because I think I've had people reach out to me on LinkedIn just saying, what you do is really cool. How can I get involved? And sometimes that's all it takes, is just starting a conversation.
And I would say too, if you're just starting off your professional career, don't be afraid to get into a support role of some sort. Get your foot into the door, prove yourself. The the work will come in your chosen profession eventually, right? It's not always, I had a marketing degree and I've never done a day of marketing, but I mean, that's still, but I'm now working with marketers. I'm now helping our marketing team go through our cloud compliance process. So things always tend to come back around, but don't be afraid to turn down roles or don't seek out roles just because they're not specifically in cybersecurity. Get your foot into a door, and like Heather said, do prove your worth and improve your work. Ask for stretch assignments, ask for other opportunities, and network once your foot is in the door.
Absolutely. And I see Ashley Severance had asked a question about how do you tell your story without telling too much. And I think to that, one of the good advice points that I had gotten many, many, many years ago in my career is your LinkedIn and those things need to be robust enough that it tells your story. But think of it like a calling card, right? You want just enough to, elicit interest without necessarily giving everything away. And I know sometimes when I look at profiles, if I'm hiring and if there's the same thing for the resume, like if there's a laundry list of things, it probably is less appealing because you really, really want to hit those salient points. But I think more importantly, when you do have the opportunity, or even if you don't and you're asking for the stretch, what's really hard to do sometimes when people in our field, it happens a lot because a lot of our roles are technical, is they think very, very linear. And so what's super important is to understand the role and why it's of interest to you, but then how your skills translate. You heard Jane talk about her epiphany as she came into the cyber world and how she didn't even think about how those skills are transferable. I would say the biggest thing you can do for yourself, regardless of level, is understand how your skills are transferable. Even if you think that you don't have all the skills, go for it anyway. And especially we as women, we know, if any of you are familiar with the Google program, I Am Remarkable. I would say check that out. I've had the great fortune of working with those folks in previous lives, and really understanding how to sell ourselves as women is key. But also making sure that we can highlight how those skills are transferable, because it's not always at face value for the interviewer. So bring that to the table. And I think often that's some of the storytelling and the soft skills that Carla had mentioned. Absolutely key.
I would like to add something that even from my experience in cybersecurity, even I started as a backup of all the people that was part of information security areas. So I started from the beginning, be as backup, sorry. So that was super interesting. And I was like, I was not starting in incident response. I was starting in too many topics: change management, security awareness, encryption. So I think that you can start to learn from other information security areas and start to see what are your skills, what are the things that you like, and whatever. So even this happened to me. So that was great for me. So I think that this is another advice.
I think too, Marlo and I both created the position that we had before the one that we're in now. And for instance, my previous role, a few roles ago, I was the social media community manager for Purina, and I was creating content and doing marketing and talking to people on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And we had an audit that created all of these issues that we needed to fix with social media user management. And so that kind of evolved into an entire role for me, just defining what that looks like and cleaning it all up and fixing it and keeping an inventory of our digital assets. And all of that was just kind of developed out of one single audit, and it wasn't even that bad. I just was very interested in fixing this problem, and it turned into a full-time position. They created an FTE just for marketing technology compliance, and that's what led me to this current role.
Yeah, good advice. And I would say, as we round out, because I think, Rosalie, we're we're getting right towards the end of our time.
We are just hitting time, and I know there are more questions coming in. I think the most important one that I'm seeing that I'd like you guys to just sort of answer would be somebody asked if for networking, would it be all right to connect with each of us on a view on LinkedIn? So I think that would be a very helpful way to end it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, as long as just say where you saw us, because we get a lot of requests. So
wonderful.
Most definitely, yeah, and for sure.
I don't want to butcher your name, but I see Urgi Alba in the chat, and you say you're in your mid-40s, interested in cybersecurity. I came from a similar background to you, and I would love to talk to you, so please ping me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. I love it. And I think lastly, Rosalie, what I would add is, we all come into the industry new roles, whether it's, in our personal lives or in our professional lives. And we all have gifts, and we all have strengths, and we all have areas we need to work on and continue to evolve. But understand those strengths, and then kind of try to characterize what's a headwind versus a tailwind, right? And there are certain things that, if there's a headwind and it's going to make it more difficult, try to figure out ways to tackle around that. But leverage your tailwinds. Those are the things that you already have working for you that have momentum, right? And for all of us, I know for me, I represent the community of individuals, women, cyber professionals, as well as minority. I don't look like it, but I do. So that's my tailwind, and I leverage that when I can. And if I know somebody has a diversity initiative, I make sure, whether it's subtly or direct, that they understand that, I'm a female Latina in this industry, and I leverage those. So that's what I would close with for myself. And I really just want to thank everybody who's in the audience, for our crew internally here at Nestlé that jumped on to support us. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. And ladies, thank you for all of your great advice today. And from me to you, because I know we work together every day, I know you guys are some of the hardest working ladies in the company. So we appreciate that. And thank you for joining. And thank you, Rosalie, for hosting and having us.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. I will reiterate those thanks. This was a spectacular webinar. I really appreciate your time today. So thank you, Michelle, Heather, Jane, Marlo, and Carla. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.